This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little bit more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's January 14th, and on this day in 1973, the Miami Dolphins achieved perfection. Joe Robbie saw something in Don Shula. Not immediately, but he came around to it eventually. After trying to lure Bear Bryant away from Alabama and Ara Parseghian from Notre Dame, the owner of the Dolphins hired Shula away from the Baltimore Colts. It cost the Dolphins a first-round draft pick after Commissioner Pete Rozelle ruled that Robbie had not followed protocol in hiring a head coach away from another team. But Shula proved to be worth every bit what it took to bring him to South Florida. Shula turned a 3-win Dolphins team in 1969 into a 10-win team in both 1970 and 71. The 71 team represented the AFC in Super Bowl VI, but lost to the Cowboys. That loss would be its last for more than a year. In 1972, the Miami Dolphins mowed down opponents week after week, posting 3 shutouts along the way to finish the regular season 14-0. And Shula had done it using a backup quarterback, albeit a really good one, in 38-year-old Earl Morrall, after starter Bob Greasy broke his ankle in Week 5. After beating Shula's old Cleveland Browns team in the opening round of the playoffs and then knocking off the Steelers in the AFC Championship game, the Dolphins had some unfinished business in Super Bowl VII against the Washington Redskins. Despite the fact that Miami had yet to lose that year, and AFC teams had been on the winning side of previous Super Bowls, the Dolphins were 1-point underdogs to the 3-loss Skins. Greasy was back in the starting lineup for Super Bowl VII, and he went to the air late in the first quarter for the game's first points. Here's Curt Gowdy calling the action for NBC that day.
3rd and 4. Greasy to the corner to Twillie's got him! Twillie! Touchdown!
This game was dominated more by Miami's no-name defense, though. Washington had trouble moving the football in the first half, and when Skins quarterback Billy Kilmer attempted to go to the air himself, the Dolphins turned into ball hawks.
Kilmer's quick flip, intercepted. Bonacani at the 50, 45, 40. Bonacani out of bounds. Oh, they're great pass coverage. Your linebackers dropping. That's the second pass they've intercepted. And he dropped back, as you'll see on the rerun, just perfectly.
That gave the Dolphins the ball back with under 2 minutes to play in the first half, and they turned that mistake into points with a Jim Kick touchdown from a yard out to give Miami the 14-0 lead at half. But this game is known for one play. After Kilmer's 3rd interception of the game, the Dolphins' subsequent drive stalled, bringing on kicker Garo Yepremian. The stars were lining up. The universe was setting the stage for the 5'7" Armenian Cypriot kicker to make it a 17-0 game on the way to Miami's perfect 17-0 season. The symmetry would be beautiful. Instead, what happened next was sheer comedy on football's biggest stage.
All right, here's Yepremian on for a 42-yard field goal attempt. Earl Morrall holding. And this kick is blocked. Yepremian has it. Throws a pass up with the ball. It's Mike Bass. He's running away for a touchdown. Mike Bass scores. What a kooky play that was. Garo Yepremian lost his head and tried to throw a pass. It went in the hands of Mike Bass. He scores. If they kick the point now, the Redskins, with 2:07 to go, are behind by 7.
I thought we saw it all when we saw Franco Harris. This might be it all, though.
All right, let me cue the circus music here because I believe I'm contractually obligated to play it when talking about this play. Years later, Yepremian tried to explain what he was actually attempting to do.
Of course, I had the misfortune of getting the ball blocked, and I figured I'd take a negative, turn it into a positive. The ball went straight up in the air. Gravity didn't help me. The ball started coming back towards me. I said, if I bat it out of bounds, I'll be safe. And when I batted it, it went into Mike Bass's hands, and he ran for a touchdown.
NFL Films called Garo's gaffe the 10th worst play in NFL history. It would certainly have climbed up that list, possibly to number 1, if the Dolphins had lost the game because of it. Instead, those were the only points the Skins scored, and Miami won Super Bowl VII 14-7. That was the lowest scoring Super Bowl until 2019, when the Patriots and Rams combined for just 16 points. The win secured the Dolphins' place in history, though, as the first and still only NFL team to go through a season unbeaten and untied. On this day in 1995, it was round 2 of the Roberto Duran-Vinny Pazienza bouts. Not as famous as Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard, but these bouts did have some controversy. The first of the 2 fights between Duran's Hands of Stone versus Pazienza's Head of Granite had taken place 6 months earlier. That first edition was a 12-round unanimous decision for Paz, but in round 5, Duran had knocked the Pazmanian Devil down cleanly and cut him above his right eye. And yet, ringside judges scored the round even. Duran may have been a bit optimistic, saying he won the fight, but observers did admit he was wrong in that round. So now for bout number 2 in Atlantic City. The now 43-year-old Duran and the 32-year-old Pazienza. Duran got out to a quick start in the early rounds, but Pazienza started connecting left hooks and right uppercuts midway through the first and kept it going through the later rounds to win this second meeting in more convincing fashion than the first. Now, if you remember, Pazienza was quite a talker, and in the 9th round, as Duran was delivering body shots to him, Paz kept yelling at him, "You can't hurt me, you can't hurt me." That lit Duran's fuse, and he landed a couple of punches after the bell. Well, Paz didn't like that, and he had to be separated from Duran and then thrown back to his corner by the referee. When the bout ended, it was another unanimous decision for Pazienza in a more convincing fashion than the first, and he retained the IBC super middleweight title. Now, after the fight, Duran accused Pazienza of using performance-enhancing drugs in an attempt to cover up for his own deficiencies and out-of-shape appearance at the fight. So, did Duran retire after this fight? Nope. He fought for several more years, and in fact, it took a car accident in October 2001 and life-saving surgery after it for him to call it quits at the age of 50. Paz was also in a car accident in 1991 that fractured 2 vertebrae in his neck. Doctors thought that he might not ever walk again and surely would not box again, but he proved them wrong by returning to the ring in 1993, and he boxed for another 11 years before retiring himself in 2004. Speaking of rings, on this day in 1954, Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe got married. It was the celebrity wedding of the century, bringing together baseball and Hollywood. The recently retired Joe became smitten with Marilyn when he saw a picture of her in a baseball uniform in the newspaper. He made a few calls to get her info. They talked and then decided to go on a date in 1952. Marilyn said they got hounded at the restaurant on their first date by men who wanted to talk to Joe. Marilyn was a little bit surprised because she had been the one to turn men's heads before. Now, they dated from opposite coasts for a little bit, Joe in New York, Marilyn in LA, and they tied the knot on this day. Now, DiMaggio was 12 years older, and the relationship soon turned into a power struggle, with DiMaggio trying to control and restrict access to his wife. There are reports that he was abusive, both mentally and physically. Monroe would file for divorce 274 days later. There was a bit of a reconciliation in the early 60s, with rumors of them getting back together. And when she died in August of 1962, he blamed John and Bobby Kennedy, feeling that they were directly responsible for her death. He planned and paid for Monroe's funeral and had flowers delivered to her grave at least once a week for the next 20 years. Here on the verge of the 30th anniversary of Major League Soccer, and looking back on the success that the MLS has had in the last 5 years, it's kind of hard to fathom what happened on this day back in 1976. The forerunner of Major League Soccer here in the States was the North American Soccer League, and it had a pretty decent run from 1969 through 1984. The league attracted Pele to play for the New York Cosmos in 1975, and that in turn led to Franz Beckenbauer, Bobby Moore, Johan Cruyff, and others following. Well, in year 9 of the NASL, things went a little off the rails during the draft. Even though the league had secured a TV contract for some games to be played on CBS and ABC nationally, it still suffered from credibility issues and financial issues. Several teams were teetering on bankruptcy. The Chicago Sting struggled to draw people in their first year, averaging only 4,000, and so they were hoping for a little publicity on draft day. And they got it when they selected Marilyn Lange with the 68th pick. Lange had played a little bit of soccer as a student at the University of Hawaii, but she was better known as a Playboy Playmate and 1975's Playmate of the Year. Chicago's GM said, "We liked what we saw." Lange never played for the team, but she did help out with some promotions. And then the Tampa Bay Rowdies had the last selection in that year's draft, and they selected Betty Jo Woodard out of North Carolina. Woodard had never played soccer, but she'd been a basketball player for the Tar Heels. She actually showed up to workouts for the Rowdies, learned a few things, but she never played a game. And time now for today's Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. Marshmallows were invented in ancient Egypt and were originally used to soothe sore throats. Now, they did not look or taste anything like they do today. Egyptians extracted sap from a plant found in marshy areas that was part of the mallow plant, and then it was sweetened with honey. Today's version of the marshmallow has no actual mallow harvested from a marsh in them. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.